will get started. Like I said earlier today, thank you for joining us. Today's speaker series is titled Beyond the Classroom, Student Editors Improve Wikipedia. And we will be hearing from 4 students from around the US. And we'll be hearing about their experience editing Wikipedia as part of a class assignment. My name is Brianda Felix. I am a Wikipedia expert with Wiki Education. And for those of you that might not be familiar with Wiki Education, we are a small nonprofit. Um, I'd say Wikipedia adjacent because we are not Wikipedia, even though people confuse us for Wiki. But Wikipedia adjacent nonprofit, and we kind of our mission is to connect academia and other knowledge based institutions with Wikipedia, right? And specifically, these students that we will be hearing from today, right? They're participants of our Wikipedia student program. And in that program, we connect with post-secondary institutions across the United States and Canada, where the instructors incorporate the Wikipedia assignment as part of their curriculum. And so we have thousands of students editing Wikipedia and adding high quality information, right? To the largest encyclopedia in the world. And our role within that program is to help students along that process to make sure we are following Wikipedia policy guidelines and that, high quality information is getting added for the world to read, right? All right. So before we get started, some housekeeping items. So just so the audience knows, we are recording this session, right? Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat. My colleagues will be on top of that. So feel free to add them in there. Also, we will have a Q&A session in the last 15 minutes of this chat. So if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. And you already added, so for those of us that might be joining a couple minutes in, feel free to put where you're zooming in from. We love to see where people are joining us, all right? And so with that said, we'll get started. I'd like the panelists to introduce themselves. So if you are able to, please, panelists, if you could tell us your name, school, and then the answer to this next question. What was your initial reaction when you learned you were going to edit Wikipedia as part of the course assignment? All right. So I'll just go, we'll start off with Phoebe, and then whoever wants to go after her, feel free. All right.
Hi, yeah, my name's Phoebe, like Brianna said. I am a junior over at Brigham Young University. What were the other questions? I've already forgotten.
Yeah, no, the question, what was your initial reaction to that you were going to edit Wikipedia?
I was actually excited. I'd done this project a couple times in different classes. And so it's kind of fun to do something that's not normal to the course and something that you know that others will read beyond, just your professor and then it never seeing the light of day again. So
Awesome. Awesome. Cool.
I can go next. My name is Johnny. I am a recently graduated, information science student from NC Central. I just got my master's. My initial reaction to the assignment, I was excited. I was a little bit relieved too. This was part of a course on artificial intelligence that had a lot of very technical assignments that I kind of felt over my head in. And so to have a writing assignment, which I felt was a little bit more sort of within my wheelhouse, I was excited to sort of get a little bit of diversity in terms of what material is going to get graded for that course.
Oh, all right. Thanks, Johnny.
I can go next. I'm Katarina. I'm a freshman from George Washington University in DC. And I was really excited when we learned we were going to do the Wikipedia project. It was for my freshman writing class, and I expected just to be writing papers all semester. So I thought this was a really unique way to kind of break up the typical writing course assignments and do something a little more fun and engaging.
Awesome. Thanks, Katarina.
Hi, it's my time. So my name is Jana, and I'm a second-year doctoral student at UCLA. I think I might be the oldest panelist here. And to be honest, my initial reaction, I feel is kind of excited because I look at many wiki pages before, like to getting to know a new concept or a new term, new theory, even a professor. So I would just search for their names to get to know who are they, and then yeah. So for this time, when I heard I need to do a wiki project, I feel okay. It's time to make some contributions. But also at the same time, I feel like it's gonna be a lot of work, because when I thought about the wiki pages, I've read it before. They are super informative, and yeah, for some of them, I even feel they can even publish that as a review paper. So I think if I want to be if I want to work on a good project, a good page, that must be a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone for those introductions. You all just answered so great. Like you already kind of answered my next question, which is awesome. So Johnny, how about I'll pass it to you for this first question, and everyone else, just feel free to chime in if something comes up, right? Um, Unlike traditional writing assignments, right? Wikipedia assignment is public facing, right? Thousands of people around the world will read your contributions, right? They just need access to the internet, basically. Can you talk a little bit about how this impacted your experience as you took on this project? Like, was this different from any other research projects you've done in the past?
Yeah, there was, I guess, a few big differences. Like Phoebe was saying earlier, there is an added motivation to knowing that your paper is going to be read by more than just a professor, right? You have sort of a sense of, sort of a public audience, but also just sort of having the mission sort of lined up. We were writing about, I guess, people of color with sort of STEM careers and STEM backgrounds, and we sort of were given the mission of sort of helping to correct sort of the deficit of kind of articles that sort of Wikipedia currently has, and so to sort of know that what you're doing is sort of correcting sort of this deficit was a motivating factor. And it was something I think that everybody in my course sort of jumped on and sort of took on with a lot of enthusiasm. I think it was one of those things where at first I kind of worried, okay, well, is my sort of article going to get critiqued? Is it going to get taken down before it gets graded? But I realized it's actually, I think, more of an advantage. One way in which I sort of really sort of found it helpful to write on Wikipedia was the fact that you have so many different resources within sort of so many different related articles. You can't
Yeah.
just copy an article down, but what you can do is sort of look at their sources. For instance, you can go down sort of like little like rabbit holes and stuff based on sort of things that you learn about your subject. And I also think, and this is kind of, I don't know if this is necessarily related to this direct question, but one thing I really wanted to point out is that because it's a public facing sort of thing, it also makes collaboration really easy. We had a partner, sort of partners assigned for our subjects,
That's
and to be able to combine. It's not always easy to write something with more than one person sort of contributing, right? It's not always easy to come up with lists of sources when sort of more than one person is contributing because everybody has a different vision. But the platform itself made it really easy and helpful, and there was not really any bumps in the road. I think that, and I had other classes where we had sort of like group projects instead, or as well. And I think that it was there's a big contrast, I think, between the platform that Wikipedia offers and then sort of us trying to work out stuff on GitHub or trying to work stuff out on like Google Slides or something like that. So I think the public facing sort of element of it, it was maybe a little bit intimidating at first glance, but it ended up being a huge advantage throughout the whole process.
Oh, awesome, awesome. And for those that aren't familiar, Johnny worked on a biography of a chemist, I think, right, Johnny? Joseph Gordon
Yes.
II. So if you want to check
Yeah, he was a
that out.
Yeah, he's a chemist for IBM and applied materials. He taught at Caltech, was really big in terms of sort of finding the influence of thin films within sort of computing environments. And he worked a lot with batteries as well. So really accomplished guy. And it was a lot of fun to learn about him.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for that. Does anyone want to chime in about this, the public facing nature of this assignment? No. Before we move on. No pressure.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
feel
feel.
oh,
Oh, okay.
great. Go for it. Go for it.
Okay. Yeah, I also feel this also made the the page need to be more readable. It's not like a academic paper, because I'm a doctoral student. We also write something very like professional, I will say that, but we will cite many empirical studies, like most of them would be the original research studies. But for Wikipedia, we know we need to put some very make sure every information is right. So we don't need the original research. We need the some review paper or news articles or books. So I think that's the biggest difference for me. Yeah, I also revised my page many times because with this, yeah.
Yeah, because it's gonna be read by thousands of people. No, totally. Yeah, and writing in an accessible way, right? Like you were saying, not being too technical or not being too academic, right? But writing for a general audience. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Katerina, you had
I'm just going to echo what was already said, but I feel like since it's a public-facing platform, I really read over what I was doing and was really meticulous about what I actually wanted to put on the article that I added to, instead of just a paper where I'd kind of write what I thought. I like really went over my answers over and over and made sure that they were accurate and that they were a good like representation of what I wanted to add.
Awesome. All right. So great to hear this like very similar threads from all of you. Katerina, I have a question for you next. So each of you, or I guess for the audience, right? There are multiple ways to contribute to Wikipedia, right? Most of our students actually improve existing articles as part of their assignments, but we do have also many that create new articles, right? So in this group, we have a mix of that. Um, Mostly, actually, no. Johnny's the only one that created a new article. Everyone else improved existing ones. Katerina, so back to the question. Sorry. Each of you did something different for this project, right? How was the process of learning the policies and the guidelines of Wikipedia? Can you kind of speak to that adventure, as I would call it, right? Learning how to edit Wikipedia.
Yeah, sure. So I thought it was really interesting to learn the different writing style. For a lot of the papers I write for university, it's usually argumentative, but for the Wikipedia assignment, it's just straight informative. It's all things that people can look up on their own, but it's in one place. So I thought it was really interesting trying to write an article for something that I'm really passionate about, but not putting my opinion into it. And I thought that was something that was really interesting to learn. And with all the guidelines, so I added on to an already existing article and going through what people already had on there and making sure that what I was writing wasn't repeated in any other articles and wasn't overlapping, just making sure I was adding something new was something that I thought was really interesting to learn and to go about. And then also kind of back,
Can you
sorry.
tell can you tell us what exactly you did? Because I
Oh, yeah, of course. So I worked on the Formula One article. I'm really big into sports, and I wanted to make sure that there's a section talking about the women involved in Formula One because they're such a huge contributor to the sports nowadays, but they weren't mentioned at all on Wikipedia. So I worked on adding a section talking about the engineers, talking about the past drivers, and just all around the women that really make an impact in the sports world. So, yeah.
Sorry, keep going. I interrupted you, but I thought the context was helpful for others. Go ahead.
Yeah. I just think one of the biggest learning curves was making sure I was writing in a really informative way and not argumentative. And sometimes I'd write something and my professor or my group of peers would look at it and that they'd tell me that's just really argumentative. You're just putting your opinion out. So how can you edit this so that it's just more informative?
Got it. Yeah, and that's something that's really hard. I mean, that's one of my like whenever I talk to students, I really want to stress, Wikipedia, we want, right, stick to the facts. Johnny, I might have said this to you. I was like, I hate saying this, but make it a little boring. I might have mentioned that in our conversation at some point. Um,
I
so
have one
yeah.
more thing to add. Another thing I found really interesting was the talk section. I hadn't really explored the talk section before this assignment, But then during this assignment, I was getting some feedback from people that were just confused as to why I was doing what I was doing. So it was really interesting to try to work through that and explain to people what I was doing. And since I went through the Wiki Foundation, it had the class name as what I was editing. So people were confused as to how the title of my class related to Formula One. So just going through and explaining what I was actually doing and communicating with other editors of the page was also something that I really learned and thought was interesting.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for bringing that up. Did anyone else have an experience with the community?
I got pretty helpful feedback. I was under the impression, honestly, that like if I messed up anything, the whole thing was just gonna get taken down, right? I was immediately catastrophizing in my mind that, I was gonna just bomb the article. But especially from classmates who we sort of peer reviewed, they gave really, really helpful, really specific feedback, but also like some really complimentary stuff too. They're able to sort of couch their suggestions in a certain way to sort of make it really, like a much more positive experience than what I was thinking in my mind. I'm not to say I'm like opposed to feedback, but it's also like when I get feedback on a paper I get returned from a teacher, it's different than sort of, the teacher not being able to access my assignment because somebody else gave sort of,
Mm,
said the article just wasn't up to snuff. So,
mm.
yeah, I think the feedback process itself was a lot. Um, uh, it was a lot more positive, I guess, than I was sort of initially kind of concerned about.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing that. Janet, you had.
Yeah, I would say, actually, I got the negative feedback at the first time. Yeah, so after I published my page, because I created a new page about loneliness in old age. So after I published it, actually, it got rejected within 1 hour. That was really fast. That's yeah. So I'm kind of feel stressed because of that, because they also I got the feedback is like it's more like a personal essay. It's not a Wikipedia article, and you cite a lot of like primary research studies, not the like the secondary, the reviewed information. And also another feedback is like yeah, something like that. So I look at many existing wiki pages. I feel really good, and to try to learn how they structure their page and how they cite, and also how they say something more neutral, not very argumentative, because that's really hard part. Um, so after I revised it and then I submit it again, and even I still got the kind of negative feedback, but luckily I got another positive feedback from another primary editor for a very relevant page, a wiki page. The topic is really relevant to mine, which is loneliness,
Ah,
and the editor said, "I think your page is great. It's not a very opinion piece actually." So yeah, I think this kind of conversation is really helpful because you will get something negative, but also something positive, even from some um, editors who have more information about this. And yeah, luckily he even sent me a wiki kitten on my talk page. So
oh, Wiki
cute.
Education. Aw, that's so awesome.
Yeah,
Oh, what a great story. Wow.
really made my day.
Receiving that, so WikiCan is like a little token of just appreciation that editors can send on Wikipedia. So I'm very happy to hear that you had that experience with the community. So thank you all for sharing about that. That's really great. Um, Awesome. So we'll jump to the next question, and we kind of talked about it already, in some of your previous answers. Um, so you all edited in areas where Wikipedia, right, needs more development, right, in these topic areas. For example, um, Phoebe edited about an immigrant detention center, right? Ekaterina edited about women in Formula One. Jana edited in loneliness and old age, right? Johnny, as we mentioned, created a biography on an African-American chemist, right? These are all subjects and people that are typical, like, unfortunately, right, that are typical of the kinds of content gaps on Wikipedia. I'd like to talk about, like, what was your motivation or the process of deciding to write on these topics? Like, how did you decide, right? We'll go, I kind of want to hear from everyone on this question, but we'll start with Phoebe and then make a way around, all right?
Yeah, so I'm a history major, and so I was in a immigration history class at the time when I wrote this article. And so we were reading just a book for the class, and our professor let us choose our own topic. So we got to choose what we wanted to write about. And I saw the Irwin County Detention Center referenced in one of the books, and I was just shocked that so for those of you that may not have heard about it, back in 2020, there was accusations that immigrant women were being sterilized in this detention center in Georgia. And so I was just shocked to hear about it. And when I talked to my family and some of my peers, other people hadn't heard about it. And so I thought that would be the perfect thing, and that I just really wanted those women's stories to be heard, especially because they hadn't really been. So
Thank you for sharing, Phoebe.
Okay,
I
I
can
can
go
go.
next.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
oh, okay. Yeah, so for me, because I created a page about loneliness in old age, so as a doctoral student, I have my personal research interest focusing on like older adults and also their psychological well-being. And the loneliness is always my favorite topic because I feel people kind of mix it up with social isolation, but they are very different. So I'd like to created a new page related to this topic, and I found there's already a existing page about loneliness. It's quite long, and the quality is really good. And when reading it, I feel kind of impressed, feel kind of surprised because it didn't talk much about older adults, even though older adults is one of the population with the highest risk of loneliness. So, and also this population, older adults, they have unique causes of loneliness, like they will lost their loved ones during their old age, and also because of their reduced physical health, they will have less opportunities to socialize with others. So I also kind of feel happy about this because there's no existing page or information about this topic, so I can make my contributions. Yeah, so I just chose this topic.
So you created it.
Yeah.
You created it. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess we had sort of a predetermined sort of list based on sort of our mission of sort of highlighting people of color in STEM. What made me choose, I guess, Dr. Gordon specifically, it was about sort of a subject, chemistry. I'm just not really, I'm a humanities guy, so just a lot of it was sort of over my head. So I enjoyed learning about a lot of that. But I was honestly really drawn when I was looking at some of the other sort of subjects. What really stood out to me about Dr. Gordon is that he had a very, very developed oral history on a website called the History Makers, which is not, I guess, a format that I get to work with a lot, especially in school. Information science doesn't really lend itself to oral history-based research, right? It's a lot different. And so to be able to interact with a source like that and to hear sort of the story sort of moderated, obviously, from Dr. Gordon was really, really interesting. And it was a great jumping off point as well for a lot of the sort of further research that I did. I was able to sort of get a sense of, okay, well, here's the professional awards he's won. Now I can look those up. He's mentioned, being featured in various sort of professional publications. Now I get to look those up. So yeah, I honestly chose it in large part because the sources for Dr. Gordon were really, really interesting.
Cool.
For me, I always have loved sport. It's something that I want to work in the future. And this Wikipedia assignment came from a class called Communicating Feminism. So we were looking at content gaps on Wikipedia relating to feminism and different women involvement. And since I have a love of sports, I figured I'd combine the two and write about something for a sport that there tends to be a huge content gap between women and the men in the field. And specifically Formula One, all 20 of the current race drivers are men. So a lot of times the behind the scenes women get overlooked. So I wanted to really write about that. And then I was kind of looking at creating a separate article dedicated to just the women in the sport or adding on to the current Formula One page. And in the end, we decided to add on to the current page because we figured that would get more views than a new article. So if someone is looking at Formula One and they're just scrolling through the Wikipedia site, they can see a section on women in Formula One and read about all these different women who have made a contribution to the sport that they probably wouldn't have seen if we created a separate article. And so I thought that was really interesting. And just, I think Formula One has such a content gap between the women and the men, and just making sure that these people get the recognition they deserve on such a public and free platform.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. I think I remember emailing with Professor Smith on like, what are the options, this group can take? Because they're thinking about writing for this. And I was like, well, there's so many paths, but I'm glad, I'm happy to hear your thought process when you're deciding like how to add this section on women. That's fantastic. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That was very insightful. Thank you all. My next question, we kind of already answered it, Jenna, but it's about interacting with the community, and you gave us a good. If you have anything else to say about interacting with the community, please let me know. Otherwise, yeah.
One more thing, and because like I said, I got rejected at the first time by a editor, but the editor will also revisit your page and make another like feedback. So I kind of get another like more positive feedback from the editor who reject my page at the first time. So yeah, and also during the whole process, many editors also co-edit my page, like adding citations or reformatting the page. Everything is really helpful. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. The community started interacting with your work like
Mhm.
immediately, which is great. And I think, it's worth saying for the audience that might not be familiar with editing on Wikipedia, right? It's a community, right? When we add our work, it's not, there isn't any like safeguarding or like don't touch this kind of thing. It's like we put it out there and it's game for any editor that wants to come through, add citations like Jana said, right? Provide feedback, all of that happens instantly. And so it's it's really great to be able to, interact and engage with the community to create higher quality information, right?
I feel this community is so alive because
Yeah.
they are real people. They really make contributions to that with you together. And also because on the talk page, they're always after a new comments or feedback sent to the talk page, you will see like a thank the button. So you can always thank the feedback or the contributions that make this process more fun.
Awesome, awesome. So happy to hear that. Um, cool. Thanks, Jenna. Um, Phoebe, this next question's for you. What is something you found surprising or did not anticipate about Wikipedia or editing with Wikipedia?
Honestly, there was a couple things. I think the first one was that I could even edit Wikipedia. I mean, I knew that there was people that obviously wrote Wikipedia, but I didn't know that I, as a college student, could do that. So that was really cool. And then I think another thing was just how regulated Wikipedia was in a way. Being in high school, everyone's like, all your teachers are like, don't use Wikipedia. It's not a good source. And then now have my professors telling me to write Wikipedia, and I just thought it was really cool that you know what I mean, it's regulated, and that there are rules, you know what I mean, you do have to have things cited, it's generally secondary sources, and that they are getting college students to do it because of the resources, you know, that we have at our universities, the sources other people might not have access to. And then the last thing that surprised me, I mean, we've talked about this before, but how many people and things aren't on Wikipedia that should be. I also wrote a Wikipedia page for my women's history class I was taking, and yeah, it's just insane the gaps that are there. So while there is so much on there, I think it's such a great project for students because there's still so many people and things that should be on Wikipedia that just aren't yet.
I have something to add to that. One thing I found super interesting was how kind of controversial what we were adding really was to people. And I kept getting a lot of comments as to why are you adding this? What's the point? And I thought it was really interesting having to work through talking with people and being like, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I think it's important. And I thought that was just something really interesting that I didn't really anticipate about like editing on Wikipedia.
Yeah, right. And it's just you're like, I'm looking to add, you know, this information about people that are participating in the sport, right? Um, but that's fantastic. Katerina, and how when you were engaging with the community and you were explaining like what you were doing, like how was that process? What were you thinking like in your answers to these to the editors?
Well, I thought it was really interesting because I didn't really understand their standpoint because I was like, it's women in a sport. How is this controversial? So I kind of talked it through with my professor and we responded to these people and we like, this is what we're doing it. This is why we're doing it. And we usually wouldn't get a response. We just respond to their comment and that would be it. And then one thing that I also thought was a little interesting was after the section we added was fully published, I think one of the subsections just got fully deleted. And they were like, this isn't important. So I deleted it. And I thought that was really kind of like, I took a second and I was like, interesting that like my work or the work that me and my peers did, they can like some parts of it and just take off the rest. And that's kind of something that I had to get used to.
Interesting, interesting. And it is, how it says, so like we were talking about earlier, right? It's about community. So, I mean, if you wanted to revisit that, right? And maybe say like, hey, I noticed, you know, editor XX, I saw your edit, right? And you removed some of this content. Like, can we talk about why, right? So, like, if you wanted to like get into it, you totally could and see if like maybe it was the tone or maybe it was, you know, what was it that for some reason didn't fit there, right? Maybe it could fit somewhere else, right? And so like the options for still, I say, improving the content, right? Like they're still there if we wanted to explore those. So that's really cool. Um, awesome. Thank you so much, y'all, for your answers. I always like listening about your personal editing experience. That's fantastic. Um, my next question is just in, you know, free for all for everyone. After working through this project, did you come away with any new perspectives about Wikipedia or any new skills that, you know, you could take with you into your future studies or careers?
I think it really improved my research sort of skills. The sort of one of the big moments that really stood out is when I met with you, Brianda, and we were talking about sort of trying to find more sources for notability. And that's something I work in a library. I'm not a reference librarian, but I like to think of myself as pretty good at research. But having sort of help and sort of being able to sort of go through Google Books in particular, that's something that's going to help me out sort of tremendously professionally, I think. So I think in terms of skills, just enhancing and sharpening my research skills. This was a really helpful assignment for that.
Awesome.
I think Phoebe touched on this, but I feel like in high school, we're told a lot of times that Wikipedia is a starter source, but it can't be the source that we cite. And after editing, it was really interesting to see how many people actually go in and edit Wikipedia and how they get their sources and how it's like there's so many people editing and monitoring what's being put on Wikipedia that it can actually be used as a really helpful source and not just a starting place. And I thought that was really interesting to kind of like unravel everything that I learned in high school about Wikipedia.
Ah, yeah, that's awesome. Great to hear. Uh,
And also, I don't know if my page is helpful for others, but it's really helpful for myself. It's because I just chose my research topic for the topic of the page. So it's more like a foundation of my research topic. So until now, when I want some information on this topic, I know I already put something in on the page, I will literally go back to the page and find something very helpful, like citations, like the reference, or some sentences I even use for my future work. So and also I'm very proud of being the editor for this page. Like when I met some researchers, scholars, they show their interests in this topic, I would just tell them I already created a new wiki page on this. You can check it out, and to find some basic information, to maybe you will find the resource based on my page. So everything will be really helpful. Yeah, and also I've already recommend a few like faculty members to use Wikipedia project as the final assignments for their courses, because I feel, yeah, the students can really contribute to the words, to the information, the knowledge base in the world. That's be really helpful.
Oh, that's so fantastic. Thank you. I mean, that's why we do what we do, right? So it's great to hear that a student, a participant in this project feels like this should be incorporated in other classes. That's fantastic. Thank you, Janet.
I think for me, the thing that I learned about Wikipedia was kind of just something about the whole world, right? We live in a society that values instant gratification. Like we love being able to go to our phones and just Google things and get information so quickly. And I realized that everybody uses Wikipedia, whether professors tell high school students to or not, everybody's using it to find their information, and how important it is that, these articles are written truthfully and neutrally. And, it just felt, even if it was a tiny thing that I was doing a tiny thing for good by making sure that there was good sources, right? Because we live in a world where there is a lot of confusion and arguments about what truth is. And so it was fun to be able to research and to do that. And I think I also just skill wise, learning how to write in a way that is accessible to all, because yes, it is important to write in an academic way, but it's also really important to be able to communicate with others and have that community interaction in a positive, kind, and neutral way.
Fantastic. Yes, I cannot agree with you more, Phoebe. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Um, Now let's see. Before we're getting close to our Q&A time, but before that, I have one last question to you all. Do so you've all, it seems like you all had like some pretty like memorable experience with this assignment, editing as part of a class assignment. Um, do any of you intend to keep editing Wikipedia like after this? I was just curious. No, you can be honest. It's okay.
I think it's
Yes.
one of those things where,
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I keep on interrupting. I think it's one of those things where I keep on finding little threads to pull. Like with Dr. Gordon's article, I realized they didn't really have an article for the hospital that his father worked at, which
Hmm,
was, I guess, served predominantly African American patients in the Piedmont of North Carolina during like the 50s and 60s. And seeing that big red link in the page is sort of frustrating to me as somebody who thinks that something like that should be covered. So I think, yeah, it's one of those things where it never seems like there's like a full stopping for them. Everybody's fully satisfied with what they're doing. So yeah, I think eventually I have to get back into it. I'm sort of, once I graduate, I'm kind of a little bit less on the computer all the time. I was in online school, but once I get the urge again, I think I will go back.
Yes, and also I love to go back to my page to make updates on the page because when I saw some new research in this field, because I know this is helpful for myself again. Yeah, so I can use this page as my main reference for my topic of the research. So I will definitely go back and update it. Yeah.
That's funny, Jenna. Go ahead, Katarina.
I feel like for me, it's something that it's always a tool that I'll have now, knowing how to edit Wikipedia pages. And if I'm ever scrolling on Wikipedia trying to find an answer for something and it's not there, I know I can make a note and try to add something later on. And also, if I'm just wanting to make an edit to something, I know how to do it. So even if I don't want to make a whole article or a whole section, it'll always be a tool that I can go back to and use.
Yeah, I'd have to kind of second with that. I don't think I'll be, in my bedroom writing Wikipedia articles every night, but I think um I've written more than I'd ever anticipate. I did it my freshman year for a class that I took, and then two more of my classes have decided to do that. And I think it's just such a great project. So, I mean, I hope that other professors do that project because, it might not be something I would seek out to do in my free time, but out of all the projects that I've done, I've really enjoyed. And so, yeah, I'd agree. It's a great skill and tool to have.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you, Phoebe. All right. Well, let's if let's open it. Let's see what's going on in the Q&A. Let's see what the audience wants to hear about, all right? So let me check this out. Um Ooh, okay. Here we have a question from that says, what is something that your professor did that was particularly helpful for you in doing the assignment? Or something that you wish they did? Something to think about.
I think pacing was really useful for us. We kept on being stressed from, I guess my professors were Dr. Grady and Professor Dawson, and they kept on stressing this is not something you can do at the last second. This isn't sort of something you can cram sort of quickly. So the training exercises really helped us sort of pace and sort of having deadlines for things like drafts and stuff, especially because we all had other stuff going on, I'm sure. And to have this kind of, paced out allowed me to sort of approach this kind of so that I wasn't sort of cramming it in the last second. So in that sense, yeah, I think having sort of different deadlines set up for things like drafts and stuff was really helpful.
Cool, cool, cool.
For me, our professor did a lot of peer review work during the project, and I feel like that was really helpful to get feedback on whether or not what I was writing was informative, argumentative, or actually just helpful, and how I can really change what I was writing. And I think we did 2 or 3 rounds of peer feedback, and in that feedback, it would be like 2 lines of positive, and then everything else would be what we can change and what we can edit. And I thought that was a really helpful way to like edit my work and see what I needed to change.
I think for me, the most useful thing, and there was two things. The first was the fact that we got to have a little meeting before we actually wrote our articles where we went over potential topics with our professor. There was only like 14 people in our class, so it was a bit smaller. But it was great because then we could sit down and see if that topic had already been written about and kind of check and see where it might fit on Wikipedia. So that was really useful, being able to have that small meeting. And then the second thing was writing our bibliography first. So I think the program's kind of designed so you do that first. But our professor also had us turn in an annotated bibliography. And that was really helpful to have to think about our sources, where they were coming from, whether they would fit Wikipedia's standards, things like that, and just kind of map out how we were going to write the article before we even did it in the first place.
Oh, that's so fantastic. Yes, that the bibliography is so important. I always emphasize that, right? Your sources are it's having, going over and reviewing your sources. That's like the best step you can take when you're doing this assignment, definitely. Um, Jenna, you were gonna.
Yeah, so I think the Wiki education training would be really helpful for me to get to know like the criteria of a good Wiki article, and also some guideline to create an article or make some edits. But I still remember at the beginning I couldn't find my draft in the sandbox. It's kind of confused because there are too many buttons on the personal portal, so it's kind of hard. So I wish there could be more like hands-on or interactive guide for like step by step to how to really do that. Yeah.
That's helpful. No, yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, that's excellent feedback. Kind of, and there's another question that kind of is in line with our current conversation right now. So, Jenna, you're talking about navigating Wikipedia and finding, your pages and stuff. Do you all have any idea about or for you, what was the most challenging thing to learn about how to edit Wikipedia? Because there is a learning curve. Like I'll be the first to say that. It takes time, it takes patience to learn how to edit on Wikipedia, right? So was there anything that stood out as something you really had to take time with to learn?
For me, it was learning how to add in citations because in Wikipedia, when you read, there's always the little bubble with the number on top, and you click that and it takes you to the citation. So just learning how to add those. And then when I was working my sandbox, it would have one set of numbers. And then when you add it to the actual article, the citations kind of moved around to fit the article better. And just learning how that all worked was really interesting for me.
I think for me, the most challenging thing was actually finding photos for my Wikipedia page. So we had a requirement from our professor to include as many images as we could, 2 or 3 images. And, obviously we don't want to break copyright laws and all of that jazz. And so there wasn't many photos of the Irwin. Actually, in fact, there wasn't an actual photo of the Irwin County Detention Center that was available for me to use. So I tried to email some news stations and news companies to see if I could use their photo if they'd release it to the commons and things like that. And so I had to kind of get creative and think of some other images I might include that would be good to use. So that one's not necessarily like a navigating thing, but definitely finding and learning about photo copyright laws because I didn't even really think about that, prior, there's tons of photos online, but couldn't necessarily use them. So
Oh, copyright. It's such a, we need it, but it's such a beast to wrap your head around. So, yeah, no, I feel what you feel about copyright. Thanks for sharing, baby. Anyone else? Um,
I was surprised by how difficult it is to mimic this style of Wikipedia, considering I'd read it all the time. I think the plain sort of speaking, non-jargony sort of writing is a lot harder to write than it seems like at first glance. It's easy to read, tough to write, I think. And I figured I would just learn through osmosis and just from reading a bunch of art, but it was a lot tougher. You had to be a lot more deliberate, I think.
right? You have to be a lot more intentional. It's like, what words, there bias in this sentence? You don't even realize it until you really take a magnifying glass to it, right? All right.
And
Um,
one more hard thing for me is because I created a new page, and after when I want to publish it or move it to the main space, it's kind of confused. Where should I really put my article? There are many options. Yeah, and they are very similar, even though I cannot remember the name of the each option, but I still remember they are very confusing and very similar. So yeah, like I just said, I wish there could be more like really hands-on, like step-by-step guideline for that.
understood. Yeah, there are a lot of like spaces on Wikipedia that we don't really um, get to interact with until you do, right? Definitely. Awesome. All right. For my last question, or a couple. I have a couple more. I have a couple more, but I wanna end in like on a positive note, right? Like let's. What was your favorite part of the assignment? I guess, like what about this experience really brings you joy at the end of the day?
For me, it would be a very simple answer. The moment when I got a Wiki kitten from another editor, that really, really funny and cute. Yeah.
Awesome. The Wiki Kitten. Cool.
I really enjoyed sort of getting to interact with like an oral history and sort of hear about because Dr. Gordon was from I guess a similar part of North Carolina that I'm from, and so to be able to hear about sort of his experiences was really really enlightening and interesting in a way that sort of I don't know, an oral history was very very different than a lot of sort of the other ways in which I've interacted with sort of the past in this area. So yeah, I thought that was great.
For me, it was just seeing my page be published and being able to like send it to my friends and be like, look at this section, I did that. And I think that was a really cool feeling, is being able to just have something online that you can go look at and know that you wrote.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I totally sent the link to all my family because I was just so excited. I'd actually, published something. It might not have been in a journal, but it was still online. That was kind of cool. But I think the most satisfying thing to me and most exciting thing was knowing that kind of like what I talked about earlier, but just that content gap had been filled and that those women's stories from the Owen County Detention Center were accessible, that people could read about them, and that even though it was done in a more neutral tone, people could make their own decision right about that. And yeah, there was some awareness raised, I guess.
Yeah. That's very powerful. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. You all really, with your projects, you all really made Wikipedia a more representative, resource for others. So thank you for the work you did. Um, and then just like, I guess to wrap up, we're getting close to the end. A couple of you already said this, that you would recommend, that you really enjoyed this project and you've kind of been telling other, teachers, professors about it. So I guess um, my final question is like, would you recommend this to other professors, and why? What's the why piece? I want to hear the why piece from you all.
I would absolutely recommend this to other professors. I feel like especially for writing classes, it's so much papers and it's so much just the same format of assignments year after year. And I feel like this was a really fun way to break that up and do something new and something interesting. And it was also something that you can take after you graduate. You can edit Wikipedia for fun. So it was just a really fun thing to learn.
Yeah, the reason why I recommend other faculty members to use Wiki project as their final assignments would be because I feel it's really a good opportunities for students to make their work like visible to the public, because we usually just write our like personal papers. There's only the students and the professor or even their peers will read that. But for the Wikipedia page, everyone can read that, and you can just search for your page and revisit your page. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the reason I would recommend it, like we've all kind of said, it's different, it's new, it's exciting, right? You not every day you get to do a Wikipedia page. It's nice to break it up from the usual. And as much as I think academic writing is great, I think it's super important and has its place. But I think it's also great to show the relevance of your subject that you're teaching by showing that the world needs to learn about it too, if that makes any sense, right? And teaching students the skill of being able to convey that message to a general audience, right? To kind of bypass the jargon and how to make that information accessible for everyone. That's a good skill to have.
Yeah, they all nailed it. I really like the opportunity to write in a different style and sort of figure out a way to express myself in a way that was different than the other sort of submissions I had for school. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. And I think learning how to write in different styles is super handy in a professional setting too. So yeah, really good assignment that I would recommend.
Fantastic. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been such a great panel. I've really enjoyed talking to you all. From a quick like skimming of the chat, it seems everyone else also enjoyed it. So, for those in the audience, my colleague has placed a link to teach.wikiedu.org if you are interested in incorporating this as part of your curriculum. If you are an academic or a professor, right? Otherwise, I want to give my thanks to our panelists, Katerina, Phoebe, Jenna, Johnny. You all were fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today and to share your experience on editing Wikipedia. It's always fantastic. It's always fun for me to talk with you all, and I really enjoy learning from you. And so, thank you so much. And yeah, I think we'll wrap it up. All right. Thank you all for coming. I also really appreciate, thank you to the audience. You all are great. Thank you for coming to listen to what these fabulous students had to say. So we really appreciate everyone who took the time to be here today. Thank you.